Hi, welcome to the Diablo podcast. We are online at DiabloIncGamers.com. I am your host, Flux. I am joined this week by Xanth.
Ahoy, hoy.
Our once and possibly future hardcore columnist.
Hopefully, yes, I think so.
And you did the column for a while, and you had kind of a goodbye podcast, and you had a little time off, and you've gotten the itch again?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my last column, it wasn't the game that drove me away by any means. I think it was just it's a combination of personal and work and just kind of the perfect storm that I wasn't playing any video games and really couldn't write as well as I wanted, but I found myself with the time and coming back to Diablo and still enjoying it, much like I was, 10, 15 years ago. So, yeah, it's been nice.
And you didn't have a horribly painful loss of a, hardcore. You didn't get lagged out or something and lost your best character. It was like, okay, screw this.
No, I've had those moments, but usually it's always a nice kind of motivator to try to get back to where you are. My characters were still living and they're still alive right now. I haven't lost one in a long time, and now
you haven't played in a long time.
Right, exactly. But in saying that, I do expect to die, and in fact, I kind of want to just to start fresh again. And in fact, I think that's where I'm going to go first, is completely ignore my old characters and just start over. And just experience the game fresh once more.
You just provided a brief tutorial on the hardcore mindset. Everybody listening who's like, start over again, oh my god. It's like, that's why you don't play hardcore.
Yeah, and I think, the way the game has been set up with, making it easier to get to 60 and monster power and stuff like that, it's not that big of a loss, I think, anymore to really start over. And I think that's always been the appeal of hardcore too, is that you can't take anything for granted, and it's the journey, not the destination.
Yeah, and many people, it's very much only the destination now. You see all these people, posting, I don't pick up anything but uniques and rare, nothing but rare jewelry and legendaries, and you can't stop for gold, and I can do 6 runs in an hour, and if I micromanage, one more click here, I can get 2 more experience per day, and it's like, so, and then what,
Right, and eventually you hit your limit, and I don't know, I think
and then it's fun.
Right,
oh, wait.
Exactly. It's not going to become fun once you have all the perfect gear and all the perfect stats. It's going to become, well, there's going to be no point to come back to it. For me, it's just being able to play and have a good time. Like, I was just scrolling through my characters today as I logged in, and I was looking at the barbarian. I'm just like, man, I kind of want to just go back to level 1, throw it on monster power 10, and just roll with them for a little bit and see what happens. Because that's fun, not trying to find the best weapon or anything like that. Is it nice when that does happen? Of course, but I think you can only appreciate it when you've struggled a little bit first.
Yeah, an old-fashioned mindset.
Yeah, but it's it's realistic too. I think we play games for fun, and that's really what you want to do. And if there are people out there that like to do everything and try and get the perfect gear all the time, and that's their fun, more power to them. But for myself, I think. Especially with the hardcore mindset, going in and playing again and starting low is a chance to do better, and I think I just prefer it that way.
I was pushing this whole concept of the Ironborn thing right before I gave in and completely joined the auction house like a filthy whore. And I was still clinging to the possibility of self-found, and the whole Ironborn thing would be like another classification of character. It'd be like you'd pick it on character select creation.
Yeah.
Like hardcore, and you could of course have an Ironborn hardcore if you were really hardcore, like yourself, and they would be barred from using the auction house. I mean, obviously I didn't have all the details worked out. It was just sort of a theory,
right?
In terms of how much trading you'd be allowed and how much bind on account, etc. stuff. But just generally speaking, people often say, the auction house is where 99% of people's gear comes from,
right?
And like you're saying, you're starting over again from scratch, and most people don't have the intestinal fortitude or the patience or the, they just don't want to do that. They want to blast through it and buy stuff in the auction house and have a, minus 15 level requirement, 800 DPS weapon at level 45 and stuff, and just devastate hell. So
right, yeah, and that actually was one of the thoughts that was going through my head as I was, contemplating going back to level 1 was, it's like, well, how could I legitimately do that when I have a stash full of stuff that I know I could use? And I would love that option, Flux, to kind of stop me from myself in some ways. But I was...
Yeah, exactly. It's like, people say, why do you need hardcore? You can just delete your character if you die. It's like, well, yeah, true, but
right.
That's really tough to do. You actually want to join a system that requires you to follow these rules,
right.
like playing live off the land sort of thing. And it creates an economy and a society and a community where other people are playing by the same rules, so it makes it fair.
Right, and then, you could have trading and stuff like that, and maybe that would create, a different dynamic in-game and open it up a little more socially as well. But, we're just tossing random ideas around.
And you wonder if we had, if they had allowed modding, like Diablo 2, somebody could have made this sort of thing.
Right.
Probably could have coded something to, have a... you wonder, if there's too much trading, then it might as well be an auction house just, by default almost.
Right,
so
right.
Maybe you set some sort of limit, like there's a flag on items and they can only be traded twice, or you can only have, 3 or 5 items on your character that you didn't find yourself, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Nothing like that is supported in the game, but you'd think that would be possible to make for a player-made UI.
Yeah, I would definitely play that. I think that'd be kind of cool. But
well, next time.
Yeah. Expansion. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not. Bobby Cody gets gored by a rabid rhinoceros. That might come into play someday. No, of course not.
A rabid rhino. I like it.
Well, you know how they are. On one of his safaris.
Or a hungry hippo.
in his safari petting zoo at his guest mansion with the gold-plated fences, yes.
Nice.
I haven't had a Bobby joke in months. I almost forgotten how to do it. It's like the good old days.
Kicking it in school.
Okay, so another topic. End of the year.
Yeah.
This is obviously the first year of Diablo 3, and possibly the last year the way some things have gone, but it seems like they're... the big news of late, we were all waiting for PvP, and Jay said, repeatedly before release, well, we're delaying PvP to get it just right and balanced, and we can't get it done, but it'll be out in a few months, and we're sure it'll be out this year, and it'll be a disaster if it's not, and it's not going to be out this year.
Right. Before we started...
And you've been boycotting Diablo 3 for 2 months in protest, and now you're coming back.
Yes, that was my main motivation. No, it was before we started recording, I was saying that it was the one thing I was wrong on, I think, in predictions. Like, I was right on sales and everything else, but I really, really thought they would get it out before Christmas, just due to, from a business sense, now it's out, we have PvP, get a couple more box sales and stuff like that, but I don't know. I don't know what happened. I would wonder if they're moving towards an e-sport, possibly, and that would cause these balance issues, or...
They've said so many times. I mean, even just quite recently, Mike Morhaime, or one of the guys, was at some big e-sport thing in Korea or someplace, or Japan, I forget, and they asked him about it. It was some StarCraft World Championship thing, and he's like, no, we're not doing Diablo 3 for your sports. We don't think we can balance it, etc. And maybe they're all smokescreening us forever, but they've said many, many times they're not going to do that, which I think is dumb. I think they should do it personally.
Yeah, I mean... I don't know. It's just been so long, and we haven't heard anything outside of, just it'll be out, and then it won't be out. No screenshots, no blogs, nothing. You kind of have to wonder what's happening with it, from everything that I've seen and what, you reported on it, and it looked like it was ready to go. And, where did the disconnect happen?
Yeah, it was ready at BlizzCon 2010. It looked like it was ready to go.
Right.
And that was, over 2 years ago. So, well, we didn't, you kind of got that, as you said, my reporting on it. The only thing we heard was Jay Wilson did a couple of tweets on it.
Yeah.
There's been nothing from any more official channel than that. Nothing through Blizzard.com or Battle.net.
Right.
And they actually didn't delay PvP. Jay just said we're not going to get the PvP blog. They didn't even delay the system. They delayed the mention of the system.
Right.
So, but I mean, Jay said it should be very soon, and then a week later he said, well, there are complications, and then a week later he said, looks like it's not going to happen, and you guys don't know the kind of issues we have to deal with,
Right.
which was very vague. And most people took that to mean Jay Wilson's eating too many cheeseburgers, and they said horrible, rude things about it. And I tried to post without, totally taking their side, because I'm disappointed about it, but it seemed pretty obvious from what Jay said that it was sort of like external forces that he couldn't specify.
Right.
It wasn't like we're lazy and we didn't do it. It's like it's done and we're ready to go, but there are technical problems, was kind of how I read it.
Right, yeah, and I remember reading that as well. Obviously looking at what happened with StarCraft 2 and them getting pushed aside due to Battle.net 2.0. And, I mean, you can even just look at Diablo itself and how long that was actually delayed. Can we honestly be that surprised then that we see this get pushed into 2013? I guess not. My hope is, that when it actually does come out, it doesn't have as many hiccups as, Diablo did in its first iteration, and that it comes out polished and people are immediately jumping in and just enjoying it.
Well, the way they had it at the BlizzCon 2010 and 2011 was they had pre-made characters, and it was like playing Super Street Fighter or something. You just pick a monk, and he had his gear set, and he had his skills set, and you would just play. And that seemed to me like it would be a very easy way to do it with esports. I mean, I can fully imagine they can't do esports with your own characters and your own gear. There's just way too many variables to try to balance it all.
Right.
But, couldn't they do something, here's your pre-made characters, you can choose from 5 different skill sets, and you can choose from, here's your 20 pieces of equipment, you can pick the ones you want. So everybody's playing with the same parts.
Yeah, just different skills. And
how different is that from, like, League of Legends or something, It seems like kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah, I would imagine it would be pretty successful, too. I would think that there would be some people who would be upset that they couldn't take the character that they've sunk thousands of hours into and use it for that purpose, but at the same time, a level playing field for all would probably give it more life than, just everybody using their own.
Yeah, ideally you'd be able to use your own, but then, there'd be another type, the tournament play or whatever, the esports version. You have to have, kind of rules and some sort of equal playing field. And it's kind of impossible to imagine, given the stratification of DPS and gear in the game now. People can have a billion gold item in every slot, and you can't imagine any way a character with 10 million in gear, even if they're both level 60, 100 paragons.
Right.
The other guy's doing 100k more DPS and has, 50% more damage mitigation, etc.
Yeah, skill can only account for so much.
And even if they do some huge thing where it's like the followers, you only get a fifth of your actual damage going into the game or something, it still just seems like there will be ways to do it with super equipment that just won't ever be a fair fight.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the whole point.
Well,
But anyway, my whole point to this is that it seems like even if they can't get everything balanced and get all of that stuff worked out, they could have gotten something similar to what we saw at BlizzCon, 2 and 3 years ago.
Right.
And that we could have been playing all year while they're working on the larger feature.
Yeah.
But obviously they didn't think that was a good idea.
At least something, to kind of, I guess, satiate the appetite a little bit and keep people, wanting more, but at least having something to go into would be nice. Or maybe, a couple things on the PTR, here and there for testing, so people at least get a chance to see it. Because, I mean, how many people are playing Diablo right now that have never experienced, PvP? And it would be, the majority of the player base at this point, outside of the few people who went to BlizzCon those years. So there's so much curiosity over it because we've heard about it for so long. We're promised it, and then it just keeps getting pushed back, and I think you do two things. You either glorify it to a point where it's going to be this awesome thing that will save the game, and that's what you wait for, or well, obviously it would never be able to live up to the hype, or you're so disinterested in it because it's been so long that it's taken you out of the game as well.
Or people just quit playing because they're tired of waiting for it. So, and then, I mean, the whole item gain will change radically once there's PvP, just in terms of, different items will have a new value. Whatever, we don't know what it'll be. Maybe you'll want 1200 resistance to everything, or
right.
whatever people will want to do. Maybe you want to stack fire resistance because there's some skill that's really good with fire or something.
And then build.
So, I mean, that was fun in Diablo 2. There were items that had no value for PvE that were awesome for PvP, and vice versa.
Yeah, and then, I mean, obviously build diversity too, and, try.
We don't have that in Diablo 3.
Well, trying out some new skills that.
Yeah, exactly. And there's all the, I'm sure there'll be, like you said, there'll be many skills. Obviously, like Ancient Spear is the most obvious one for the barbarian,
right. It looks cool, but, realistically, do I ever use it? No. But having a place to use it would be kind of cool. Being able to utilize my barbarian to the fullest.
And this all brings us back to why is this not a system yet? And, I mean, pretty clearly there were more problems. Diablo 3 wasn't as good and polished and balanced a game as they thought it was upon release.
Right.
And that's why they scrambled to make these big content additions and Paragon levels and monster power and stuff.
Right.
In version, 102 and 103 and 104 and 105. Mm. And certainly that had to eat up a lot of their dev time that they could have spent on PvP otherwise. But, I guess they just didn't, they ran out of time, they couldn't get it the way they wanted, and there were these unspecified external problems that Jay hinted at.
Yeah.
And all of that is totally unacceptable, and we should all boycott.
Yes, stop buying Blizzard products.
Don't play the game you've already paid for. That'll really make them unhappy.
Or, play it for hundreds of hours and then complain that you didn't get your money's worth.
Yeah, the clock's still ticking on that, yeah.
Yeah, I love that, by the way. I don't get that complaint.
Yeah, that was the fun ones, or like, after a month, people got like 500 hours already. They're like, this game sucks. Like, well, you played it 9 hours a day since launch. Maybe you're getting a little tired of it?
Right. I think a lot of people who came over from MMOs, too, were used to that kind of game where you would sink that amount of time and really not be anywhere close to the end. You put in 500 hours in, World of Warcraft. I don't know. What do you have? What's the level cap there? I don't even know.
A goddamn panda bear.
Yeah, exactly. You have a panda that does stuff.
He brews beer.
Right. Whereas in Diablo, you put in 500 hours. You should be in Inferno. You should have some good gear. And you should be grinding. And for some people, I don't think they knew that that's what Diablo was.
That reminds me, I was going to mention about the PvP stuff, is they had PvP in World of Warcraft. It didn't go with launch, and it came out later, and it was not a great system, and it had a lot of inefficiencies and inequalities, and they changed it and patched it repeatedly. And you would kind of wonder why they didn't do that with Diablo 3. Maybe they were trying to be too perfectionist upon the launch instead of just getting out a functional system they could improve over time.
Right. And how far... Right, it was like just shortly before launch that they announced PvP wasn't going to be in. Was it like a month before it came out?
Yeah, well, you know how they are. They must have known obviously before that.
Right.
We need 4 months of steady work on PvP, and we've got 2 months till launch. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess they didn't want to tell us in January or something that it's not going to be there, because then people would have been like, well, you can still do it. You should work faster. If you wait till it's too late and we're all enthusiastic over the game finally coming out, and which lasted, of course, 1 hour after release.
Well, that's if you could get in, obviously.
Yeah, and then there was what was it, 503, 507? What was the...
Was it Arrow 504?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Or no, maybe it was 503. See, time, it dulls our memory here.
That and vodka.
Yeah. But, yeah, that was, launch, if we're going year in review, you got to talk about that launch.
I don't remember. It's been too long. We don't even remember what number it was anymore.
Yeah, that's true. It was 503 if I'm 95% sure.
Yeah, if only there was some way to check this on the internet.
I'm not gonna research.
Yes, I think that's my job, actually.
Right.
Yeah, I don't really have a year. Maybe we should plan a year in review podcast for next week or something. I could actually go over a bunch of notes. We were just kind of had the PvP thing at this point.
Right. Yeah.
Since it's recent news.
Yeah. It's a rambling podcast. It's cool.
And you are ready for your Thunderdome 2-minute 1-man league hardcore.
Yeah.
That'll last.
That would be another thing too. If going back to PvP, is talking about what the hell's going to happen with hardcore and what they're going to do. The last thing we heard was possibility of dueling or a fatal option, and then you hear, no, it's not going to happen. And that was like a year and a half ago. So there's...
Yeah, we won that argument. Let's not bring that back up again, though.
No, I know on that, but at least give us some idea.
we are picking up, again, this is Flux talking to Xanth.
Ahoy, hoy.
And we recorded a podcast about a bunch of stuff, including some mentions of the PvP system not being announced in 2012, right before Christmas. And then I was going to post that podcast today or tomorrow, and suddenly, oh boy, the PvP announcement appeared. So we're recording this as a little add-on. I'm going to edit this into the podcast. You just listened to our conversation from before Christmas, and now we're talking about the PvP thing, which was announced just earlier today. And you posted the news, Xanth, and Reddit. Can you give our listeners a brief summation of what they said, and what did you think when you were reading it?
Well, I mean, if you've gotten to this podcast and have heard, get your surprise ready, because there's going to be basically no PvP, no team deathmatch. Anything that you were promised back in the day is gone. There'll be dueling, and that'll be coming in 1.07, and with more details to come, but that's about it. So what we've been clamoring for a while doesn't exist. It's gone the way of the Mystic, and
some people were clamoring for dueling, though. A lot of people were saying, let's just give us dueling. I don't want team deathmatch. So some people will take this as good news, I think.
Yeah, I think, I think the way it was broached kind of it's going to hit both sides. Some people are going to be like, yay, we're getting dueling, but I think it's because you had so many months of build-up, like, okay, there's going to be PvP, there's going to be PvP, there's going to be PvP, and then the game got released and there was no PvP, and then it's more like, and then it's like, okay, well, there's no PvP, but here's some dueling, which is cool, and I'm not against the concept, but I think the build-up was so great that there's no way to just walk away from hearing news and be like, well, hey, dueling, right?
First of all, do you think this was what Jay was going to post, 3 or 4 weeks ago? They said, very soon comes the news, and then that got delayed without specification. Do you think this is what they were going to post back then, or is this a whole new thing? I mean, did things change in the last month, or did we just get a delay?
I think we got a delay, because, if you think about holiday sales and stuff like that, could this news have affected people purchasing the game before the holidays? Maybe.
Somebody said that. There were some comments of that in the comments. That seems a very cynical view. Like they were going to admit there was no PvP coming soon, but this post said there will be PvP soon, and the next patch is going to be PvP.
Right.
I mean, the game sold 11, 12 million copies. If you haven't bought a copy by now and you were on the fence 7 months later, well, if there's going to be deathmatch, I'll buy it, but if not, there won't, and I guess I'll get it for Christmas anyway. I mean, do you really think that would have made a difference at this point in their sales, delaying this announcement until after Christmas?
But if they've known for this long, too, because, it couldn't have been something like 2-3 weeks ago. They're just like, oh, it just doesn't work, this isn't fun. Let's cancel it, maybe it's a combination of some things, where they thought they had it and it fell apart, but I don't know. And we had talked before about the balancing and possibly an esport thing, and maybe this gives a little credence to that too. I don't know. There's just like so many mixed messages in that post. We don't want to rush something. We don't want to put out something unfinished, and then you kind of look at Diablo 3.
Well, we're going to anyway.
Yeah, you look at Diablo 3, and they kind of did that. And, we talked, and we had said that, by far, Diablo 3 is a better game than launch. Well, why not give us a bad PvP and fix it as you go, instead of trying to polish something to the point, and, because they thought Diablo 3 was polished when they put it on anyway. So put it to the fans and fix it that way.
Yeah, in my little notes I typed up here, I said, where was the VP of Common Sense in, February? Saying, look, we can't get the deathmatch thing done. It's a huge new system. It's a lot of balancing. Let's just put out something like D2's Dueling, but a little bit better.
Right.
And then fans can have that, and we can work on something new, which is what you just said. And now that's what they're doing, but, now it's 9-10 months later, and Jay the Disaster Wilson takes the fall.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. I mean, obviously, Jay's going to get a lot of hate for it, but as much as much to my chagrin, he can't take all the blame. There's a lot of other people behind this. I don't know. It just feels like they've one step forward and 2 steps back. That to the point where the game isn't the game that we were sold, and that's kind of sad. I didn't have any intention of becoming this gigantic PvP player, but I was excited for it. I was excited for that option. In fact, one of the things I was really going to try and push for was 60s on each character to go in and experience deathmatch from those, and maybe I would get hooked on it. But with dueling, while it might be fun, I mean, I think there's that one-on-one versus one-on-one element, which might be nice, but I really did like that team kind of focused PvP and switching it up a little bit. And as we had talked about using the pre-made characters and stuff like that, that all kind of had my interest piqued, and it was very surprising to read that this morning, and it wasn't what I expected. I maybe was expecting another delay, but I wasn't expecting it to get scrapped altogether.
And it's a lot of issues with the whole dueling thing. They said, details coming soon. Obviously, we don't know if it's going to be like, maybe. I mean, I can't imagine they're going to have like the hostile switch come back. I mean, that was one of their main gripes about D2. The ninja looting and the hostile switch.
Right.
It's like, okay, ninja looting is coming back too. You can now lose your drops if you're not quick. It's like, no.
Maybe we put down our banners and that's a duel challenge. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out a use for them.
Yeah, I've never even used mine.
Yeah,
but yeah, they can't have. I mean, in town, it's like there were all the main complaints about D2, and it was hostile switch and town camping and all this kind of crap. Well, given that nobody plays public games anyway, maybe that'll add a certain erotic friction to the context. You could be slaughtered as soon as you leave town.
Yeah, there is that. But then, I mean, if no one's playing public games already, then there would really. Well, I guess you can't take 0 away from 0, but there's no inclination to go in there and play that, especially on hardcore too, where you could be fearing for your life. And the one versus one thing too. You're talking about balance. There are so many well geared characters out there that would just run through anybody that they came up against. That's why I kind of was looking forward to that team element. Like, hey, maybe I get groups with somebody who's just really good, and then it'll be
other
fun.
People who are all mediocre like yourself. So.
Exactly. Obviously, with details to come, maybe there's some sort of matchmaking service or something, but it would seem almost too grandiose for just a 1 versus 1 dueling. It does seem like it would be more in-game kind of an option, whereas, at least looking at the PvP side, that concept of, rankings and going up in ladders or whatever would have been a little bit more appealing.
Yeah, I can't imagine they'll have a hostile switch. I think it'll probably be something upon game creation. I don't think it'll even be in the game. I think it'll be like they'll basically just use the arenas they were going to have anyway, and it'll be 1v1 now or something. But it's weird they wouldn't even say anything about that. Well, they have all these arena tile sets, and they said dueling like D2 again, but it just seems so uncontrolled. They're just running around waypoints, sniping at people. That was just such a half-assed system.
Yeah, maybe it is a 2-man or 1-man leave kind of thing, but. I don't know. I mean, what was your reaction, Flux? I mean, in terms of when you read the news, like what did you personally think?
Well, I mean, I liked the idea. I loved the team deathmatch stuff at BlizzCon in 2009. I played that. I mean, that was fantastic, and people in 2010 all liked it too. We did a bunch of podcasts about it and articles, and I have to have a whole comment on that on their people tried it and didn't like it thing, which I'm a little dubious about. But I mean, I liked the idea of dueling, and like you said in D2. The reason I never really got into dueling in D2 is because people who did it a lot, you could never hope to beat because they had such specialization of skills and equipment. And there were lots of, there's all these damage mitigation things, and they'd have, triple stacked resistances. So you couldn't even scratch them with your attacks and stuff. And it was like there's just no point in even trying because, a casual character equipped for PvE with, magic find on and a variety of skills and stuff can never hope to compete with a PvP geared character who had every single thing devoted to that one talent.
Right.
And I'm just afraid it sounds like they're just going to recreate that in Diablo 3, where you'll just, most people you'll fight. If you just want to do it casually, you'll just always get your ass handed to you and never have a chance, and you either have to devote yourself fully to making a character, which takes, time and obviously expenses and equipment,
Right.
or else you just don't do it. And that doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me.
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking is, is this going to be one of those things that gets added into the game but doesn't get any use, that people are like, yeah, I could, but what's the real point? And I could easily find myself doing that too, especially, if the hardcore death is permanent and stuff like that. And is it worth risking for no real reward? Probably not.
What if you get full corpse loot in hardcore permadeath?
Ooh, it would be cool, but again, it goes back to that same argument. I would assume whomever I'd be going up against would probably... Well, they'd probably take my stuff, is really my concern.
And they wouldn't even want your stuff, because they'd be so specialized for PvP, they just look at it and throw it on the ground.
Yeah, that would actually be kind of sad.
One of the funniest jokes I ever heard about Diablo 2 was when people used to do item trading, and for a while there were bugs, and with the windows, you'd have to drop your items and show the other person, like walk to them and stuff. Mm. And some people would get in their game with necromancers, and they'd say, okay, drop your item, and they would turn it into an iron golem and leave the game. That's the worst thing in the history of bad things. People didn't know that items became iron golems, and they were gone forever. But yeah, so that will happen in D2. You'll get in D3. I mean, you'll get killed. They'll look at your gear, and while you're still watching the game, they'll say, all this gear is junk, and just drop it and exit the game.
Yeah.
And then you will sob hot, bitter tears. But actually, you're used to losing all your stuff when you die anyway, so maybe not.
I mean, at least somebody gets some amusement out of it. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It was definitely shocking, though. And I don't know. I was really, like I said, I still can't get over, one, seeing the blog today, just, on a whim, when not expecting to hear anything of it, and then going on and finding out it's just gone. It's weird. I mean, you think of all the systems that have been scrapped along the way, and how many we lost before we even got to release. I thought they were going to make it, and to see this one get cut, it is just genuinely shocking.
And that runs into my one of my two closing points here: the reinventing of the wheel. As you say, they've had many systems that got, during development, certainly, we'd say they were iterated, reiterated, and then de-iterated to nothing sometimes.
Right.
And things like the skills and the rune system, the item system, attributes. Remember for a while, attributes, they were like strength and stuff, and it all changed back. Mm. The crafting system did a bunch of that. We saw the Mystic come and go,
right,
and possibly come back again if she ever gets out of that spider web.
And Talisman and...
Yeah. And then post-release, we've seen lots of stuff evolve back kind of the D2 style. Legendaries changed back to being, useful.
Right.
In theory. Although I sent you some screenshots of ones I found today. It's like, not so much. The end-game difficulty kind of turned back into D2.
Right.
They made Inferno much easier. Item drop rates went up, etc. So all this stuff, they reinvented the wheel and changed everything around and tried to do new stuff with ARPG systems. And quite often, they just ended up going back to what they had to begin with.
Well,
and it looks like we've done that with PvP as well. They had, we're going to do death matches, we're going to do ladders, we're going to do all this different stuff.
Right.
And then it's like, well, we're just going to do D2 with a different button.
Yeah, but if you look back on it, like you look at all the grand ideas that they had, starting in 2008, up until release, how many of those brand new, really cool things actually made it?
Most of them didn't. They got de-iterated.
Right.
I will give them credit for one thing. The health system's much better in D3. Everybody has their own resource and the health orbs.
Yeah.
That definitely beats potion spam and everyone having leech and mana.
Right.
I mean, obviously there are some things that were changed and improved. I don't mean to just bitch about it.
No.
But go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you on that, on the resource system. It definitely is better. But, if you go back, I can't help but wonder what this game would have been like if those changes would have made the game. Talisman and, the skill system originally, PvP. It'd almost just be a completely different game.
It probably will be in the expansion when they all put them back in.
Right. It's just kind of, it's disappointing to see those things go because, I think the challenge for anybody picking up a title, from somebody else is how do you keep it true to the original while making it your own? And it seems like every step that they've made, it hasn't been to make it their own. but to kind of just go back to what they thought was working, if you're going to take a risk, just go balls out and see what happens instead of just trying to play it safe. It's like with PvP. If it's not working, throw it out there and fix it, but don't cower and worry so much.
Yeah, it seems like they overdevelop everything. Like
right.
they keep saying, they tell us about all this cool stuff they're doing, and then we don't see it, or else when we do see it, people don't think it's an improvement.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, as I had stated earlier, the game's in better shape than release, but I don't know. I wonder how many people might have this little bit of news be their breaking point.
I mean, I was looking at the comments on the news post you did. There's like 70 comments already, and very few of them are, I give up, this is my last straw. A lot of them were like, I don't care about PvP anyway.
Right.
Or else, people who are pissed enough have long since given up at DICE, which isn't exactly a winning strategy. But
yeah, if you don't wait for something, you're not disappointed when it doesn't show up, I guess.
Yeah, I was just thinking today, like every time there's a news post, someone shows up and they're like, people still play this game? It's like, is that really... There are probably an infinite number of things in this world that I don't care about and I'm not interested in. I mean, practically speaking.
Right.
I don't collect groundhog sculptures. I mean, just, anything you can think of, people don't do. None of those things do I feel compelled to seek out fan sites of and then add comments about how I don't like doing those things, and the people who do it are bad. It's weird that we have this, obviously entertainment media is kind of a different thing, and people are disappointed or whatever, but I don't go to fan sites of European soccer teams and say soccer sucks and so do you for watching your team.
Right.
It's not on my radar. It's just weird that people have this need with Diablo 3 and other such things.
I'm now just...
Does it bespeak a personal weakness of them?
I don't know. I always did find it odd, especially, writing a hardcore column too, where I'll post it and then people will write, hardcore sucks, I never play it. And I'm like, okay.
Great, thanks.
I appreciate your input, but if you've never played it, why are you talking? And why did you feel the need to say it? But internet anonymity will do that. Although now I kind of want to go to a groundhog sculpture fan site and post a few things.
I'd say be careful when you Google that because it's probably a metaphor for something you don't want to know about.
Yeah.
And you'll see like hairy naked men in like lasagna tubs or something, and they're like, we're groundhogging each other. It's like, oh god, no. My other observation, Blizzard is huge on secrecy and NDAs and all that kind of stuff. And all we ever get are sort of these, like in this post today, we had testers who got bored with it. Wouldn't you have liked to actually hear some of those testers or see like a video of them playing it and then having like a Q&A session? Like they had, before launch, they had that thing in August of last year where they flew a bunch of fan site people in, which did not include us because they hated us at the time. True. And they actually talked about, here's the auction house, here's the new systems, here's what we think. And you got like first-hand reports, and I think that made it much more realistic and believable, and here's what they're saying. Wouldn't you have liked to have seen like a focus group of some actual players, even if they were just friends of Blizzard employees? I'm not saying they had to fly me in, although I would have been happy to go, and in fact I'll be in Southern California in about 2 weeks, and we'd be happy to stop by then and try out the deathmatch. But wouldn't you have liked to have seen, instead of like, one sentence in this Jay Wilson blog, which seemed very kind of PR scrubbed,
Right.
I mean, obviously they're not really a PR company. They kind of do stuff and tell us what they're doing, and we can like it or not. But it seemed they could have handled this news release more personably.
Right, and they do have a PR company, or a PR department there to kind of do that. And
isn't that like damage control, generally speaking, though, it seems like?
Yeah, but I think when you're handling larger press releases, too, they're going to go to their PR person. The only reason I know that is because my wife actually does work in PR. But that line, it did bother me. To kind of circle back here, I don't know. It doesn't seem believable. To like, they tested it, they got bored. Well, anything you do continuously will eventually lead to boredom. Were these testers also doing the regular content and then switching to deathmatch? Like the way a normal person would play. That was one of the things that kind of stuck out to me the most, because anything that's happening for that continuous amount of time is eventually going to lead to boredom. And if you're playing against a small set of people and stuff like that, as opposed to the larger player base, yeah, of course you're going to get run down. But I don't know. I imagine my play style, dropping in a couple matches and then, going back to the other stuff. That's what I wanted. I wanted that option,
And the alternative is we're just going to get D2 with a new bell and whistle, which people did for 10 years and got bored of. So it's like, what?
And they're still doing it too, technically,
Yeah.
I think that's most people who are on there now are dueling.
And that kind of goes into the whole reinventing the wheel thing, where they kept saying, we want to make a new indie game that's not the same thing as D2. And some people are like, I want Pendle Skin runs back. People, because they complain about the Nephilim Valor system, just say, I want to run the same boss in for 2 minutes and have it be profitable.
Right.
It's like, well, that was Diablo 2. That was Mephisto runs or whatever.
Right.
And lots of people obviously enjoy doing the same thing over and over and over again. So it's weird that that's kind of defines Diablo 2. I mean, it's that's why it's called grinding, right? So
and that's the essence of the game.
But we can't have that in PvP because it would be boring doing the same thing over and over again. It's like, what are we doing now?
Right, exactly. We're running the same bosses to get keys, to get organs, to get a ring, rinse and repeat to gain a couple levels. So, I mean, isn't that by itself tedious? Of course. So what's the difference? If
you find it tedious, it's tedious, and some people enjoy it and find it perfecting the same skill set, or you're always trying new equipment or new builds or new varieties.
Right.
Okay, in theory.
In theory.
Probably not in reality.
Yeah. But I don't know. I didn't like that line, and it would have been, I think you're right, it would have been kind of cool if they would have called the fansites in to take a look at PvP and get some input from outside Blizzard. Not that I'm volunteering or saying that they should, but I might have.
You wouldn't mind getting out of snowy Wisconsin for a few days, would you?
It is cold. I've never gone to a BlizzCon. I haven't been to California in years. Just putting that out there, Blizzard, if you're listening.
But you have to do it with hardcore characters. As soon as they all die, you have to quit playing. So you can sit and watch everyone else for the rest of the day.
Hey, I'd be okay with that too, as long as they're providing food.
Yeah, it's pretty good food at Blizzard, yeah.
All right, good. See? Win-win.
I mean, the first, I look back at, not to totally digress on this topic, but like when we first went to Blizzard North in early 2000, I think it was in December or January of 2000. Obviously, one of those would be 1999, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And they invited us up there. We were the first fan site that got to go see the place, and we played Diablo 2 nonstop for like 3 days, and then wrote whatever we wanted to do about it. And whether readers liked or didn't like our coverage, mainly we got complaints I didn't cover the Necromancer in enough detail. So, not that I'm still harboring a bitter grudge about that or anything 11 years later. I think people got a sense of, this is cool, it's not just, some reporter for GameSpy or whatever.
Right.
It's an actual fan site, and they're telling us what they really think. And we did say things, we were obviously kind of starstruck by the experience, and we're very, praiseful, and because it was an awesome experience, and it was a really fun game, but it does give you a sense of here's what the actual people think. It's not just one sentence in a Jay Wilson's PR scrubbed blog post.
Right, and that's one of the things I've always liked about this site too, is that I know there is sometimes a negative connotation that some people can pick up on, but I just kind of view it as a little more balanced. And I've always liked that, is that you get a real take if there's something that's not working. It's more than just, here's what Blizzard said, well, here's our take on it a little bit. But overall, one of the things that we've been doing for a long time has been talking about how much we actually enjoy the game, which you don't hear from a lot of those other sites as well. But you're right. I mean, to get somebody who's not afraid to kind of say, hey, the game's great, but this doesn't work, would probably be helpful. And that'd be cool if Blizzard would take advantage of that more often.
I don't know. They're very communicative, and I've talked to most of these guys in person at BlizzCons and stuff, and they're just they're totally real people, and they're really nice to talk to. And we heard that from some of the guys at that thing last August.
Right.
I mean, Nazaris was talking about, like, they went out to dinner afterwards and chatting with people, and I was at Blizzard in 2009. We had a little, fan sites all got to go over to Blizzard one day and saw the Diablo 3 developers and had lunch, and you're chatting at lunch, and I was talking to Chris Haga, and he was talking about how he was in high school reading reading Diablo INET, and that's how he really got into Diablo and Blizzard in the first place. And then he got a job there, and then he quit acrimoniously and had a blog, and Jay Wilson made a comment on it about about Dave Brevik, and bad things happened. But he's no longer working there. But I mean, they're all very real people and really enjoy communicating and talking and stuff. And I think that fans get a false sense of them being kind of corporate automatons sometimes when all you get are these brief press releases, tersely worded, uninformative. Here's what happened, and you don't get to do anything but complain about it.
Right, and I think harking back to the old days, when I was a reader, it was nice.
Just one of the commoners.
Yeah, I didn't even make comments.
One of the 47%.
Right, I did submit one news story, so that was my big day.
There you go.
But to go back to that humanizing of the development, and I think we become less patient when you get those kind of PR moves and stuff like that. But to utilize your fan sites and get people more information through a more human lens would just make more sense to me. And maybe that's just not the way things are run anymore, and maybe with WoW being as big as it was, then they can't do that kind of stuff anymore. But that's kind of sad.
Well, that's ending on a down note, but
well.
But yeah, obviously we're unhappy about the team deathmatch stuff going out, and I would still like to see that kind of esports style pre-made characters pick them and fight each other thing where you just had at BlizzCons. I don't know why they couldn't have thrown that in 7 months ago either, but I will continue saying that forever, and it will never happen. So it's kind of irrelevant. One
question then now I think that gets brought up is we knew 1.01 was supposed to, or 1.1 was supposed to be the PvP patch, and now Dueling is coming in 1.07. So what's left to add in then? I mean, what comes after 1.07?
I was talking to someone about that just recently, about at some point they're going to release, I think, a bunch of new items and stuff. I mean, they talked about that pre-launch, what happens when you get kind of inflation and the market stagnates eventually, and there's only... Like I was reading that article that I posted today about, item sales and what the best items in each slot are and stuff. And really, it's pretty much established what the best items in each slot are. Everybody wants Lacunis, and everybody wants Mimpo, and et cetera.
Right.
And it just seems like, obviously, when the expansion comes out, there's going to be a whole new level of items and gear, eye level 64 items or whatever.
Right.
But I really think at some point they're going to have another content patch in the not-so-distant future with skill balancing and stuff. And I would not be at all surprised if they, maybe as part of crafting overhaul, or
maybe
just to give you something new to look for, something new to hunt for, to shake up the current system. And then, of course, once you have a new level of gear, all the current stuff becomes 100% cheaper immediately.
Right.
And people can maybe upgrade their stuff to do new things. And really, my other complaint, I was talking to Azure about this recently, is you don't do this so much in hardcore, but the farming is so stagnant with just the Act 3 runs.
Right.
And the main problems are that there's just nowhere to farm in Act 1 or Act 2 that has anything approaching the profitability, mainly due to the much lower monster densities.
Right, yeah. I just enjoy going into Act 3 and just wailing on a whole bunch of stuff, and you're right, you don't really see that. Maybe a little bit in Act 4, but I don't know. Act 4 and I just don't get along.
Yeah, no one likes Act 4. But, the Act 4, there's only, really just 2 areas, neither of which are that large, the 2 Silver Spire areas.
Right.
And the monster balance is just, I mentioned for hardcore especially, it's just frightening. There's just so many huge, corrupted angels and mallet lords and stuff that are really dangerous. There's very little cannon fodder unless you count yourself.
Right, yeah. And then, stuns and all that jazz that come along with it.
And Morlu meteor droppers, and it's a scary place.
Right, yeah, you can get overwhelmed real quickly.
But my theory you don't want, to make Act 1 and Act 2 more farmable, I don't think you just triple the cultists. That would just be weird. It would ruin the play balance.
Right.
You're in the burning halls, and suddenly there's 42 summoners around a corner, which is kind of what you get in all of Act 3, right?
Right.
But it would just look weird. So my thinking is just they need to add like additional dungeons. We've kind of diverged from the PvP topic here a little bit.
Well, I think it's a logical progression. You know, what comes next?
Yeah. So, you know, just I think instead of, you know, just the current levels, you have new dungeons, and you know, it's like you enter it and it's like a random tile set. You know, it's the cathedral tile set or whatever with a little bit different layout.
Right.
And there's just a much higher monster density. You know, there's 5 times the little bat dudes or whatever. And maybe it would seem a little artificial, but it would give you an option of something else to play that would be equivalent to what you get in Act 3 today.
Right. I would love to just see everything unlocked and being able to switch between acts. Like, you know, it would make trying to get keys so much easier because you don't have to worry about restarting a game, you know, and losing your sacks between, you know, switching acts and stuff like that. I think it would also be a little more fun, and think of all the different routes that you could end up taking if you were able to jump between Act 1 to Act 3, back to Act 2, and I don't know, I think that would open up the game a little bit more, you know, and yeah, I would hark back a little bit to D2, but it would be, I don't know, I think it'd be more exciting, and I think the world would seem a little more rich and less, you know, pushing you down one path that you can't change anymore. And maybe
you see a whole like a full-on guest monster thing like we had in Diablo 2 expansion, or I guess it was 1.10 that added that, where suddenly you're getting, you know, Act 4 monsters in Act 1 and stuff like that. Hey, it's a corrupted angel. Look out, Mira Amon. It's a giant angel.
Maybe. Hey, that wouldn't be awful.
You're running through the Weeping Hollow. You know, it's like scavenger. You know, Mallet Lord. Okay, that's a little change.
Something. It wouldn't be bad though. I don't know. I really would like to break up, you know, the linearity of the game a little bit more.
And we've all seen every bit of it 10,000 times at this point. So
right. And
if you do something like the Lyceum, like that little, you know, the sub-dungeon in Act 1 that's not very often encountered, it's really trippy because it's the cathedral tile set, but it's put together differently.
Mm-hmm.
So like the hallways go, you know, like it makes a left turn instead of a right turn where you're always used to it, and the big room doesn't end in the way it's normally ending. And it's like, what? It's really creepy you get the same thing if you go back and watch that 2008 WWI movie, you know, the first thing with the barbarian going through the dungeon.
Right.
And like it's identical tile set, but it's put together differently, and it's really creepy to look at it now.
I was actually, I was in there today because I'm releveling my monk, and I got to the skeletons with the shield, and it just came into my head how, oh yeah, barbarian, use stomp, and they'll drop their shields. I'm like, oh wait, that doesn't happen. But, you know, cool idea.
One of my favorite things when I'm playing a new Demon Hunter, which of course never happens because I'm not hardcore, but is you get to those guys early on, you've just gotten rapid fire, and they'll block like 70 arrows in a row sometimes. You just have this fountain of block text kind of appearing on the screen as they're blocking your 12 shots a second from rapid fire. And they die, of course, but it's just really fun to watch them try awful hard. It'll block, and then finally their shield just sort of disintegrates under the onslaught.
Nice.
I miss rapid fire. It's one of those low-level skills that just you never get to use later on in the game.
Yeah, that's why you have to go hardcore, die, and then you'll always get a chance to reuse it.
Yeah, from level 11 to 17,
right.
And you never touch it again. But yeah,
those are long levels, though.
Okay, so any last thoughts on PvP?
I don't know. Like I said, you know, it wasn't going to be my major area of focus, but I was looking forward to it, and as I mentioned in the news today, the only word I can really say for it is I'm just surprised and maybe a little disappointed.
A little? You sounded more than a little earlier.
Well, I mean, you know, I look at the fact that I'm still playing today. PvP or no PvP, I'm still going to keep playing and enjoying the game, but you know, it's one of those things where you're just like, really? Well, that kind of sucks.
Okay, you've been listening to the Diablo podcast, and this is our follow-up to PvP, and we'll probably do another one in a week and a half, in 3.5 months when we get the updated on how PvP is actually going to work. Moo.
Moo.
Moo.